Even though prisons aren't designed to house the best of the best, some of their inmates can be shockingly dangerous, violent, and despicable. Despite the fact that some criminals who have committed crimes have been charged and then released, some stand out for having done the most. Here is a list of the top 10 most dangerous prison inmates in the world. Starting at number 10, Barry Mills. California native Mills from Windsor was first imprisoned in 1967 and served a year in a county jail. After an armed robbery in California in 1969, he was arrested and spent the rest of his time behind bars. At USP Atlanta in 1979, he was found guilty of almost beheading John Marsloff, another prisoner, in order to settle a gambling debt. A federal indictment claims that Mills participated in the 1980 unification of the AB power structure and took a seat on the gang's three-person federal commission. He expanded the AB's operations in federal and state prisons with Tyler Bingham, taking the organization into drug trafficking and organized crime. Mills passed away on July 8, 2018. Number 9. Tyler Bingham. Even with a partially Jewish background, Tyler Davis Bingham is a lieutenant in the Aryan Brotherhood prison gang. The Aryan Brotherhood is an international crime organization and neo-Nazi prison gang with nearly 20,000 members both in and out of prison. They are said to be responsible for a disproportionately high number of prison killings, according to the FBI. After being found guilty of murder, he was transferred back to the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, where he is currently serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Number 8. Rodney Alcala. American serial killer and sex offender Rodrigo Jacques Alcala Bucur received a second sentence of 25 years to life in prison after pleading guilty to 2 homicides committed in New York in 1971 and 1977. He was sentenced to death in California for 5 murders committed there between 1977 and 1979. Alcala's involvement in 9 murders has been proven, but the real number of victims is still unknown and may be much higher. More than 1,000 images of girls, boys, and women, many of them in sexually explicit poses, were gathered by Alcala. He was accused of killing a woman in 1977 who was recognized in one of his photographs in 2016. Tyler was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole after being found guilty of murder and was sent back to the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility. Number 7. Charles Manson. Ironically, there is no proof that Charles Manson ever committed a murder himself, despite being one of the most notorious convicted murderers in American history. On the Tate LaBianca murders in 1971, Los Angeles prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi used his helter-skelter theory to convict Manson and several of his female associates of 7 murders. Later, Manson was found guilty of 2 additional murders, Donald Shorty Shea and the earlier murder of music teacher and small-time drug dealer Gary Hinman by Bobby Beausoleil. Manson wasn't involved in any of the murders, but due to the laws governing accomplice liability, he was held just as accountable as the murderers who actually killed the 9 victims. The state of California commuted his sentence from death row to life in prison in response to a 1972 Supreme Court decision that abolished all states' remaining death sentences. But he passed away on November 19, 2017 from a cardiac arrest. Number 6. Lisa M. Montgomery. Lisa Marie Montgomery was found guilty of murder. In 2004, she killed a pregnant 23-year-old. She proceeded to cut the unborn child from the mother's womb. The woman had been pregnant for 8 months. Luckily, the child survived and was given to its father. Montgomery admitted to the crime in 2007. She received a death sentence. Later, bipolar disorder was identified in her. She had endured years of sexual abuse as a child. She also suffered from amnesia, psychosis, dissociative identity disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Her attorneys argued that she was severely handicapped based on these circumstances. She shouldn't have been tried in a regular court, they claimed. She was executed by lethal injection on January 13, 2021. Number 5. Thomas Silverstein. American criminal Thomas Edward Silverstein spent the last 42 years of his life behind bars after being found guilty of 4 separate murders while incarcerated for armed robbery, one of which was later overturned. For killing corrections officer Merle Klutz at the Marion Penitentiary in Illinois, Silverstein was imprisoned for the final 36 years of his life in solitary confinement. He was a former leader of the Aryan Brotherhood prison gang and a brutal killer, according to the prison administration. Silverstein insisted that the 3 murders he committed were motivated in part by the inhumane conditions in the prison system. He was housed at the ADX Florence Federal Prison in Colorado, in a specially designed cell in a section known as Range 13. Number 4. Pedro Rodrigues Filho. Pedro Rodrigues Filho is a Brazilian convicted serial killer who is known for pursuing and killing only criminals while a teenager, specifically an entire gang in retaliation for the murder of his girlfriend who was pregnant. He served 34 years in prison before being released in 2007, having been formally sentenced for 71 murders, but claiming to have killed over 100 drug dealers, rapists, and murderers. After being initially imprisoned in 2011, Filho was charged with inciting riots and deprivation of liberty and sentenced to a further 8 years in prison. Filho was later released in 2018 after serving 7 years on good behavior. Prisoners, mostly rapists, were among his victims, all of whom he killed while incarcerated. Number 3. Ramzi Youssef. Ramzi Ahmed Youssef, a convicted terrorist from Pakistan, was a co-conspirator in the Bojinka plot and one of the primary perpetrators of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing and the bombing of the Philippine Airlines Flight 434. He was detained in 1995 while attempting to implant a bomb in a doll by the Pakistani Inter-Services Intelligence (ISI) and the US Diplomatic Security Service at a guest house in Islamabad, Pakistan. He was later extradited to the US and was given 2 life sentences plus 240 years for his involvement in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing and the Bojinka plot. Number 2. Michael Swango, housed in the ADX Florence Supermax prison, is a former doctor and American serial killer. Michael Swango, for 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. He was already fascinated by tales of brutal deaths since childhood and also developed an obsession with the Holocaust, with a focus on the graphic depictions of the concentration camps. Later, he became obsessed with poisons. He has worked in several hospitals throughout his career, frequently being let go for his part in unexplained deaths. Usually, he poisoned his co-workers and friends while giving his patients high doses of risky medications. One of the most dangerous serial killers in American history, Michael Joseph Swango is estimated to have been responsible for almost 60 deaths according to the FBI. And finally, at number 1, we have Eric Rudolph. Eric Robert Rudolph, also known as the Olympic Park Bomber, is an American domestic terrorist who was convicted for a string of bombings in the southern United States between 1996 and 1998 that left 2 people dead and over 100 others injured, including the bombing of Centennial Olympic Park during the Atlanta Summer Olympics in 1996. Rudolph was one of the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives for 5 years before being apprehended in 2003. Rudolph accepted 4 consecutive life sentences in 2005 as part of a plea agreement that spared him a trial and the possibility of the death penalty in exchange for his guilty pleas to numerous state and federal homicide charges. He is still detained at the ADX Florence Supermax prison, which is located close to Florence, Colorado. So that's the end of the video. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and press the notification bell so you never miss out on our next videos. Until the next video, take care.